It is 3 o'clock here on the East Coast, so I think we'll get started. I want to welcome everyone to the first Next Generation Extension Learning for Leaders for 2019. I hope all had a great holiday and are ready to get back to work, and because there's a lot of work to do that all of us have. Today, our first Learning for Leaders is going to be growing Extension's reach and relevance through the 4-H brand, and it's a look at National 4-H Council's work in partnership with Extension to grow our reach and relevance through the brand to really grow 4-H and the impact that it has across the country. Joining us today is Jen McKeever. Jen is the Vice President of Field Marketing at National 4-H Council, and she'll be going through various aspects of it. We really have three goals for today's webinar. One is to briefly reintroduce the 4-H Grows program to you. We have a lot of new administrators and directors and that have come on board since the program started 2.5 years ago. We want to share the return on investment and the key learnings to date, as well as the ways you can support the success of 4-H Grows in your state, whether you're currently investing in the program or not. And then thirdly, to engage you in a conversation about the program's priority areas, as well as the ways you need the 4-H brand to work for you in your state, to grow Extension, to grow 4-H. This discussion is particularly important as Council and the ECOP 4-H Leadership Committee plan for the program's future beyond this last year of the initial 3-year pilot. And I would just like to, if you could advance that, Mark. And as a member of the ECOP 4-H Leadership Committee, I'd just like to reiterate that building a strong 4-H brand is a critical part of the committee's vision to grow 4-H. At the committee's meeting earlier this last fall, they reaffirmed its commitment to and support for this priority through the 4-H Grows program. This effort is the first of its kind for 4-H, and as a committee member and an investor institution, I appreciate the opportunities during our committee's calls and meetings to offer constructive feedback and provide counsel to shape the program's direction. And we're glad we have that opportunity with all of you today to have that conversation. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jen to take us through the beginnings here.
Thanks so much, Ed, and good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. Before we dive in this afternoon, I do just want to take a moment to thank our partners at APLU and Virginia Tech for all of their help and support with today's session. We really appreciate it. Mark, if I could go ahead and have you move to the next slide. I can see, at least here on my screen, several familiar faces, but I know we also have some new colleagues that this initiative may be new for joining us, as Ed mentioned. So I'm going to start with just a quick primer for those that may be new to their role, learning about this program or becoming refamiliar with it for the second or third time. And for some of my friends, I know this is going to be information that you've seen in some of your trainings with us before, but I think it certainly bears repeating. And I'm going to ask you just to start this afternoon. I want you to just take a quick minute and think about your favorite brand. And if you want to just quickly type some of those that come to mind for you in the chat box, that would be great. Curious to see what we have today. And as I make that request, I see Cabela's, REI. As I make that request, I see a brand that's near and dear to my heart pulling up in my driveway right now. That's Amazon. I know sometimes that makes the short list as well. Start making a smart reader today. That's a great one, Lila. That's one that I don't think makes this list very often. It's great to see it here. As you think about some of these, Under Armour, your new favorite football team perhaps, there are probably a couple of common words or themes that come to mind for you, or at least they do for us as we think about our brand building nationally. One is a consistent experience and message. I'm going to refer to another one of my favorite brands as an example here. Think about Target or Starbucks. When you walk into any of those stores, you know exactly what you're going to get. There's a consistency of experience and there's a consistency of message. And even in a program like 4-H, where one of our strengths is certainly our diversity, that consistency of message is really critical because it helps to build trust. And we know building our brand promise of empowering more kids with the skills to lead for a lifetime in building that trust is mission critical in all aspects of the work that we do to engage young people through 4-H positive youth development, not just the marketing side of things. We're demonstrating that we can deliver on what we promise, and that's absolutely critical. But there are some other reasons, as you can see, why having a unified brand really works. It increases relevancy when we're able to speak with a collective voice. That has become increasingly important in environments today where we all know we are competing for the time and attention of our young people that are participating in the program. Their parents or caregivers that are making the decisions for them to join 4-H or to stay engaged in 4-H. We're also competing for time with media, with our donors and supporters. And increasingly, we're not only just competing against other youth organizations, but as you know, we're competing against sports teams, after-school jobs, other commitments that we may see our parents or caregivers needing to put their time and attention to. So being able to break through that competition, break through the noise, and break through that clutter has become even more important. As I look at our current group of 4-H Grows investor institutions, 75% of them self-assessed their own level of marketing capacity and readiness at early stage. And so a unified brand really helps there because it can make marketing planning easier and more efficient. When you don't have all of the time that you'd like to put towards brand building or the resources, we know we want to be able to work smarter and not harder. And you're going to have some examples from Chuck Hibbert and our colleagues at Nebraska 4-H of how they're seeing that translate into real benefit for their program in just a little bit. We're certainly seeing at the national level that our stronger brand is giving our donors confidence that 4-H can mobilize. You know, if my colleague Jill Bramble or if Jennifer Sarangelo were here with us this afternoon, I know that they'd share that 3 or 4 years ago even, when we would meet with some of our brand new donors that have come to the table, like a Google or like a Joanne, they probably would have shared with us that they weren't seeing 4-H in their communities. They weren't seeing that local presence. So being able to have that unified brand that translates into a seamless local experience and being able to see the clover locally absolutely gives our donors confidence that 4-H can mobilize, that we're here and we're strong. We're also seeing that it's increasing the chances that those types of donors are going to invest with us for the first time or that they'll reinvest in bigger ways. And you're going to see some numbers for exactly what that's beginning to translate into for us in just a few minutes. At the end of the day, strong brands are raising more in the marketplace than those that are not. And this is coming from some industry data that we have from an organization that provides brand services and platforms to many of the types of brands that you've shared here in the chat. So we know at the end of the day, it's not just about working smarter, but it's also about using those resources wisely and that money talks and that being able to raise more, whether that's through your donors, whether that's through a media presence, absolutely helps to extend our reach and relevance. And so a unified brand is really important from all of those perspectives. As we move to the next slide, I want to just quickly share some of the drivers that are the primary criteria that National 4-H Council is using as we're assessing our path and our progress towards really transforming the brand. I know there is some tiny type here, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every single driver that you see here. But where we're at right now is really beginning to come out of this emerging brand phase that you see on the far left side of this slide. As we look towards where we want to go and where we know we can go, it really is that transformational brand space where 4-H is top of mind, extension is top of mind, we're nationally recognized, and we're what we often like to think of as a demand brand. And so you see here on this slide some of the milestones that we're using as your national marketing partner to assess our progress in moving towards that transformational brand place. One of the milestones that I do want to make sure I'm highlighting right here is if you look towards the bottom left in that breakthrough brand slide, right there in the middle, you'll see that we want to make sure we're delivering value to extension through this program. And brand building as a means to do that has absolutely become a priority for our National 4-H Council Board of Trustees. And you're going to see that reflected in our new strategic plan that takes us through fiscal year 2021. We're looking at a floor of $28 million in marketing value that we can deliver back to extension through our brand building efforts. And our goal is absolutely to continue to grow that number. In fact, as you look to kind of that transformational brand space in 2025, we see us looking at $100 million that we're delivering back in value to extension, not just from the value of our marketing, but as we think about professional development, as we think about donor dollars, really a much bigger picture. But knowing that marketing is central to that, I wanted to make sure that you knew this program and the work that we're doing together is not just a priority for us as your national marketing partners, but a priority for our board and something that we're reflecting in our strategic plan and benchmarking against as well. Let me just take a quick pause here before we move on to see if there are any questions or anything I can clarify so far. And again, you're welcome to write those into the chat pod or to take your phone off mute and share those. Rick is saying that he could use more background on the marketing value metrics. That is absolutely a great question, Rick. And I can tell you that there are a couple of things in addition to what you see on this slide that we're using to measure that marketing value, particularly the value that we're returning to extension. And as we get into what that ROI has looked like to date, or that return on investment to date, we'll dive a little deeper into those. But high level, there are a couple of things. One is collective media value, how we're able to generate that awareness and raise our relevance through both earned, donated, paid, and social media, and being able to increase that number. Second that we're looking at are those new and renewal donors that I mentioned. So we talked about donors coming to the table and investing or reinvesting in 4-H at higher levels and increasing those amounts as well. We also look at alumni engagement and the revenue potential off of the alumni contacts that we are able to deliver to our state 4-H programs every month, continuing to grow not just the number of contacts, but the revenue potential that goes along with that. So those are some of the key drivers that we've looked at. I can tell you in terms of how this stacks up to what you see here in this slide, and if part of the question is, well, how are we doing so far? As we closed out FY18, we were right where we needed to be. So we talked about that media value and some of the ways that we measure that. Our goal, as you can see in FY18, was 20 million in media value and top media recognition. We actually ended the year with 25 million in value as we think about the promotion and visibility for 4-H in national publications like a Fast Company or through the radio, through NPR, those types of things. And we look at those high value placements as well. So we had about 20 of those that came in FY18. As we look at alumni and friends, that 250,000 number you see is a database number, cumulative numbers that we'd want to see in our national alumni database. We've already exceeded that number. We are at 360,000 names in that database. So exceeding our benchmark in that area. In the partnership marketing space, these are donors that are coming to the table and not just providing what you may think of as traditional grant dollars to support our program, but also providing dollars and support to our marketing initiatives and leveraging and taking on some of that promotion and outreach themselves. Two really great examples of this would be our partnership with Joanne and our partnership with Google, where they're actually investing in the marketing to the tune of $2 million across some of those partners. And we have 4 of those, what we call comprehensive or 360-degree partners at the table right now. Does that answer the question and provide some additional context? And again, this is a place where we're happy with either your individual states or in a follow-up to dive a little deeper, but I did want to make sure I answered Rick's question and provided some tangibles around what that really looks like and how that translates. Great question. And if I could have you move us to the next slide, Mark. So I want to take that path towards transformation and just kind of share it in a more visual way through our campaign timeline as we think about where we are and where we're looking to go. And this is also just to provide a little bit of stage setting and context. What you're seeing here is where we began in 2015, really looking to refresh and relaunch our 4-H brand with 4-H Grows Here. A unified look and feel through that logo, through some of the new visual imagery, through the videos and other print resources that we're making available to our states. In April, we took that to the next step and really went big and bold with our Grow True Leaders campaign. That campaign was really focused on the outcomes of 4-H, the why 4-H makes a difference, those true leaders in your community who are making change every single day. As we moved into the fall of this year, we were really ready to take our campaign to the next phase and begin to expand our storytelling tools. And we've begun to do that this fall with Inspire Kids to Do. Now, I'll tell you, when we share this information with a lot of your local educators, the question I typically get right around this time is, oh my gosh, does this mean we have to stop using our Grow True Leaders resources? I feel like we're just starting to use all of those assets in our state. Do we need to move away from that? And the answer is absolutely not. We want you to treat this next phase of our work together as an extension of our storytelling, as we focus on the how we inspire kids to do. Hands-on learning and doing in partnership with caring adult mentors. And so that's the next piece of the story that you're going to see us really digging into through this piece of the campaign. Rick has also asked, as we look at this campaign and we think about those metrics, is that increasing our diversity of donors and our diversity in alumni? And the answer to both of those questions is absolutely. While I don't have the slide in this deck, I know many of my 4-H program leaders that are joining me this afternoon are probably familiar with a slide you've seen in some of our national marketing updates, where we look at the partners that are coming to the table to invest in 4-H positive youth development. And although I don't have an exact number on my hand, I feel pretty confident from what I've seen in those slides and what I remember in the past in sharing that that number has grown at least 5-fold as we've launched the campaign. And again, brand new partners at the table, like a Google, like a Renewal from Bear or a Joanne, are great examples of that. We've absolutely seen diversity grow in our alumni champions that have come to the table to share how proud they are to be 4-H grown as well, both in the number of those alums as well as in the diversity of those alums. These are both places, though, candidly, Rick, where we know we still have more work to do. So we're proud of the success that we've had so far. It tells us that as a system, we're moving together in the right direction, but our work is definitely not done for sure. And Mark, if I could just have you take us to the next slide. I want to talk specifically for a moment about our 4-H Grows program that many of you have co-invested in along with us. Right now, that is representing a shared investment of just about $875,000 annually. And as some of you may recall and know, this is a proportional investment model for those participating institutions based on their level of Smith-Lever funding. And this model is one that we developed with guidance and partnership from our extension directors and administrators prior to launching the program about 3 years ago. Participation is voluntary. I know a lot of people do think of this as an assessment, and that's understandable. But this is absolutely an opt-in. And as you can see, we're very proud that we have 34 of our 50 states participating with us right now. I know one of the things that I often get questions about as we share this is twofold. One, with that level of about 875 and 34 institutions as your national marketing partner, how do we feel about that? We think this is an excellent place to start. We couldn't be prouder of the work we're doing and the 34 partners that have come to the table to invest with us. You know, those represent major media markets across the country, which is absolutely amplifying our reach and relevance. And for a program like this that we've never tried before in 4-H and Extension, this is absolutely a strong place to start. I did want to talk a little bit, though, about how this level of investment and how the way we've resourced the program compares to some of our peer organizations and maybe some other familiar marketing programs that you've seen. So, as you might imagine, when you hear me say that this is a proportional model based on Smith-Lever funding, right there, you can probably guess that the way we're choosing to resource this is a little bit different from some of our peers or from some other national marketing initiatives that you may be familiar with. Typically, what we see with what we'll call a national to affiliate marketing program like this is that they're resourced in a couple of different ways. One is a mandatory assessment or checkoff programs. For those of you that think about your commodity marketing, a program like Milk Pep or Got Milk, that type of model. Another model that we see, and this is more common with our peer youth development organizations, is that there's a percentage of annual dues that may come back to the national organization to underwrite their national to affiliate marketing efforts. The last common model that we typically see is that there's a percentage from either national cause or other national donors that comes off of that support to underwrite the marketing initiatives. So we're in a space as we've built this where we are using a little bit of a different model. And I think that's worth noting. Our initial request to Cooperative Extension to begin this program was an investment of about $1.5 million. And that's also based on what we've seen our other peer organizations invest in their national and affiliate marketing and what we felt really would be needed to truly grow and scale and deliver the broadest results possible for an effort like this. We have been lean and mean and looking to deliver the best results we can with the $875,000 annually that we get. And again, we feel that for a new initiative like this, it's a very strong place to start. But did just want to offer some different data points for comparison for how we see our peer partners resourcing their national to affiliate initiatives and what that amount has typically looked like. While it is definitely not an apples to apples comparison, if you were to look in the commodity marketing space, I think, you know, probably the most recognized marketing initiative there is through the milk producers, and now it's Milk Life, but a lot of us remember the Milk Mustache and the Got Milk campaign. You know, that's based off of a $96 million assessment that comes into that organization, and they're spending about $93 million on advertising, promotion, and education. So clearly a different scope and scale than where we are, but I think numbers worth noting for sure. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. Rick asked us a little earlier how we were really looking at that return on investment and what some of those more tangible benchmarks were as we're moving from an emerging to a transformational brand. I also wanted to make sure I took some time this afternoon to let you know where we are so far in terms of our shared marketing investment through 4-H Grows. And 2.5 years into this program, we are seeing really strong results. I shared a little bit earlier those key benchmarks that we're using to assess that progress and those core areas, and you see them on here represented a little bit of a different way in this slide. But in just about 2.5 years, since we launched the program in July of 2016, we're already seeing a 5-fold return on investment in the 4-H brand. So we're looking at a total combined investment between the dollars that National 4-H Council puts towards the marketing, pro bono support from some of our marketing partners, like I mentioned, as well as Cooperative Extension's investment. That comes to about $12.5 million over that 2.5-year period. Our return to date on that, measured against that collective media value, those new and renewal donors, and that alumni contact revenue potential, is $64.5 million, as you see here. So that's about a 5-to-1 ROI. Even if you were to take out, just for the sake of argument, the alumni contact revenue potential, since that is a potential and not an actualized number, that still keeps us at about the 5-to-1 ROI mark. That is extremely strong. What we typically see with national to affiliate programs like this is you hit your flywheel at about the 3 to 5 year mark, and you begin to see an ROI of about 2-to-1. So to be at 5-to-1, 2.5 years into this program, I think we should all be extremely proud of the work that we're doing together and the ways that we're seeing that investment begin to pay off. Mark, if I can have you move me to the next slide, I want to peel back this onion one more layer and look specifically at that $2.4 million that our 4-H programs have invested in the GROWS program and the ROI on that. And again, numbers here are extremely strong. In all of our extension regions, the cumulative returns through October of 2018 are substantially exceeding your level of investment, as you can see here. And again, the core things that we're using that measure into the numbers that you see here, it's the value of the nationally driven media outreach that has resulted in earned or donated media placements in your local markets. So that could be TV or radio PSA coverage. That would include local media placements. And more often than not, we're seeing that in online channels. And that's also the value of partnerships that are reaching your local programs through some of our national donors that have invested specifically because of the stronger 4-H brand. And we've mentioned several of those already. Google, Joanne, CME is certainly another one. The last area, of course, that figures into here as well is the revenue potential of those alumni contacts, and also the value of the marketing and trainings that our 4-H GROWS investor states have participated in. Building marketing capacity at the state and local level was a key priority for this program. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to quantify for you, not just the value of those trainings, but also the value that you're receiving as compared to if you were paying for these trainings on your own through the open market or through another outside vendor. And so all of that factors into the ROI that you see here. Let me just pause again. I know that's a lot of information to throw at you back after the holiday week, late in the afternoon. Any questions? I am not seeing anything in the chat pod so far. Oh, do we have a question?
Yes, I do. This is Albert, and I have a question related to the measurement of the ROI. How does the enrollment in the 4-H programs factor into this measurement?
Can you say your question one more time again, Albert? I'm not sure I caught all of it.
Okay, I said my question relates to the measurement of the ROI, the return investment, and if whether or not there is a relationship between that and the enrollment in the 4-H programs in the areas affected.
It's a terrific question, Albert. And at this early stage in our brand building efforts, we're not seeing that ROI tracking to growth just yet. And that's absolutely understandable and what we would have expected as your national partner. And that's twofold. Part of that is because we knew we had a big job to do upfront in the awareness building phase of our marketing efforts. And for us nationally, that really has been targeted towards a different target audience. It's that Gen X millennial alumni mom. And I know many of you have heard me speak about her before and the resources and why she's such a resource driver to 4-H. So as we have built our national marketing program, it really has been with an eye towards re-engaging that alum, making her aware that 4-H is absolutely can still be a valuable part of her experience today, and bringing her back into the community. And so we're seeing that, of course, in that acquisition number that you saw, how we've been able to grow that database, the number of alums that have come forward to be championed for the program. Those metrics have been quite strong. So we're not seeing it translating yet into a growth number, but that's also something that we're beginning to work on in partnership with many of our states. Because although we knew this wasn't where we'd be right now, we absolutely know that growing your reach has to be a critical piece of this. And so as we're looking at the next phase of our brand building through Inspire Kids to Do, we know that really needs to have legs to start to translate into that growth number. One of the ways that we're going to be doing that is using that campaign to help support volunteer recruitment and engagement. We've heard from many of our states that they need resources that can really help them expand not just the number of young people participating in the program, but the number of volunteers that they have available to support those initiatives. Because without those boots on the ground, as you know, reaching those kids can be a real challenge. We also are beginning to see that Inspire Kids to Do is having some of that traction, and that states are getting really creative in how they're using that to drive what you might call that grassroots marketing that really is aimed at bringing more young people into the program. And a priority for us in this next phase of the campaign is developing and delivering more of those kinds of hands-on materials to help you there, whether that's brochures, flyers, some of those more practical on-the-ground tools that you can use for your local program promotion. That wasn't an initial focus for us in the first phase of that work, but as we move into this next area with Inspire Kids to Do, it certainly will be. Other questions?
Jen, there's a couple in the chat box.
I see one from Nick related to Albert's question, where are we with membership? From what I have seen, Nick, in the data from USDA, which I believe is still about 2 years old, we are still hovering at about that 6 million mark. We have not moved past that yet. We've stayed fairly stagnant in terms of that growth. Lila, I also see your question about things you can do to increase the ROI even more. I'm going to ask you to hold that thought for just a minute. We've got a slide a little bit later in our time that goes directly to that, as well as some great insights from our partner in Nebraska. So just wanted to make sure that you knew we saw that, and we'll be coming to that for sure. All righty, Mark, if I can have you take us to the next slide. I also wanted to share, now that we're about 2.5 years into the program, some of our learnings that we've had in partnership with those institutions that have been on board and investing with us. And these insights come by way of a survey that we shared with our investor institutions back in September. It went to extension directors and administrators, state 4-H program leaders, 4-H Foundation executives, and the individual that we work with is your day-to-day marketing contact in those states that are participating. We call it your field marketing liaison. Really rich data came back as a result of that survey. We're using that to inform and improve our year 3 efforts. Also, as we think about what this program will look like beyond this initial 3rd year of the pilot. So from that data, we saw high level that there are a couple of areas of this program that are working really well for our states and where they're absolutely seeing the value. That prominent alumni engagement nationally has been a really big one. And if you think back to September and the launch of our Inspire Kids to Do program and the celebrity and influencer alums who came out in support of that, whether that was Reba, whether that was Eric Stonestreet, whether that was Peggy Whitson, we are definitely seeing growth in that engagement, and our states are noticing and appreciating that as well. We talked at the top of the hour about the importance of a unified brand and a consistent message, and the tools and resources that we've provided to our investor institutions to support aligning those marketing messages against a national calendar, we've heard have been really valued and really used. We've also heard, and it's not lost on us, that you just kind of want to know what we're going to be doing when as your national partner. And so some of this is just kind of basic information sharing 101 that we knew needed to happen, but we're also seeing that it's making a real difference. As our investor institutions know, a significant portion of your investment, about 50%, goes towards the dedicating marketing expertise that we've hired to support your states in the form of our 3 field marketing directors that service those 34 institutions. And we're hearing from our states that they're appreciating those relationships, they're seeing value, and that often it is their national field marketing director who's helping them think more creatively and innovatively about how they're telling their 4-H story. We had to build an entire brand new program communications infrastructure to support this program. And we're hearing that that's bringing great benefits to our states as well. Whether that is our bi-monthly web training series, our Facebook group, our monthly 4-H Grows e-news that goes to our investor institutions, or the monthly and quarterly calls that we have with your states. Having those networks is really working for you. I'd also say it's really working for us as your national partner. We talked about the importance of being able to scale that unified message quickly, and our ability to have these touch points to you, particularly when we may have new opportunities that come to the table through a cause partnership or a media partnership that are late breaking. Having these channels where we can reach you and have good conversation and move to action quickly have been really important. As we move to the next slide, we absolutely expected 2.5 years into this new initiative that there would be some places we'd need to grow together, and we're certainly seeing that. So while we've had really strong success with national alumni engagement, we've heard from many of your institutions that that hasn't yet translated in to the type of engagement you'd like to see for your alumni locally. And that really is on two fronts. One is really tapping into and leveraging those national alums that I mentioned. We know they come from your states. They're not national 4-H alums. They're Oklahoma 4-H alums or Florida 4-H alums. And so as we look to year 3 of this program and beyond, really supporting you to take better advantage of those celebrity and influencers connections is a high priority. Making our marketing resources more turnkey for our states to use is another place where we know we need to improve, both in our timeliness in sharing these resources, getting them out to you at least 90 days in advance, but also really making sure that they're designed in a way that they are as turnkey and easy as possible to implement. We know that staff don't have a lot of time for marketing, and while we want to make sure we're providing the hand-holding and support that you're needing, we also want to make sure we're really minimizing the amount of time that you need to do it well and to do it right. Local adoption is a place that we absolutely expected going into year 3 of this program where we would need to grow. And it's definitely an untapped opportunity that we have. You'll hear a little bit from Nebraska about some of the inroads that they're making there, but really being able to go from just a sharing of resources that can be used and adopted to the state level and taking that down to the county level and getting these resources in the hands of your county 4-H educators and professionals are absolutely critical. Demonstrating that return on investment. You've heard this afternoon some of the ways that we're working to make sure that we're quantifying that, but we need to do a better job of, I think, merchandising that and giving you resources that you can use, particularly as extension directors, administrators, and state 4-H program leaders, to tell that story seamlessly, whether that's to your university leadership, whether that's to your state 4-H foundation board, or others that may be resourcing your institution's participation. And I'm just checking, I know I saw another question come in here. Are these marketing efforts reaching out to underserved populations? Yes, Rick, that's absolutely a place where we are continuing to grow. I'd also be candid and say we know that our work is not done here. We so appreciate the partnership that we have with our 4-H colleagues across the country through the Program Leadership Working Group and the Access, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee, and specifically within that, the Latino Advisory Committee. We've been using those groups as touch points and sounding boards for many of our resources, and as we have opportunities to expand our resources and promotion. One big win that we had earlier this year, thanks to the support of our partners at New York Life, was a brand new day in the life video that we were able to debut that featured NASA astronaut Jose Hernandez and a Texas 4-H'er from our Juntos program that really talked about the difference that 4-H has made for him. We were delighted that not only were we able to subtitle that video in Spanish, but we're going to be working in the weeks and months ahead in partnership with the Latino Advisory Committee to make sure we're getting those resources out the door. We talked about diversity. That's extremely important to us in terms of the images that we provide to you as your national marketing partner to use. We know the 4-H experience comes in all shapes and sizes, And we want to make sure that as we're doing outreach to new communities, they're seeing themselves in the national marketing and branding that we're able to supply. We have a brand new public service announcement that you can find on 4h.org, and that's both in radio and in TV, TV PSA, and that has been translated into Spanish as well. So again, these are all areas where we acknowledge there's more building to do, but with the resources we have, we feel we're taking the right first steps. But definitely an opportunity for growth that we see in partnership with our state 4-H programs. And we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. I really want to make sure that we are opening up this time to hear from some of our states. We've heard from our land-grant institution partners that have invested that hearing from one another is really critical. So I'm looking forward to bringing my colleague Chuck Hibbard on board to share what the experiences look like from Nebraska. And as I do that, I just want to set up a couple of the essential elements that we've seen. Lila asked earlier, are there specific things we can do to increase that ROI even more? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And we see those falling into kind of 3 key areas as we look at our states that have really been able to run and grow 4-H in partnership with us. The first is identifying clear goals and big wins for your marketing. And this is something that you should be doing whether you're investing in 4-H grows or not. This can be something as broad and as deep as what you saw in our marketing metrics earlier. But more typically, as we've been working with our states, this is translated into just being able to identify 1 or 2 big wins. Whether it is an alumni influencer that you'd love to be able to engage in your state and haven't been able to do so before, or a media partnership that you'd like to be able to build. Sometimes this looks more like programmatic goals. And then as your marketing partner, we can come in and help translate that into what a marketing win might look like. But where we've really been able to run most quickly with some of our states is when they come to the table with some ideas in mind that we can build on. The second key area is really beginning to build internal capacity for marketing success. And this looks a lot of different ways. More specifically with 4-H Grows, for us, it's been having a dedicated person, or sometimes it's even a committee, with whom we can regularly engage to advance the state's marketing goals. You heard me refer to a field marketing liaison a little bit earlier, and that's one example of who this might look like. What we've also seen is when we have somebody in that role, or again, in some of our smaller states, they've chosen to resource this through a committee. Those individuals are often very proactive in coming to us with great ideas for how they'd like to leverage their marketing support. And we welcome that type of a partnership. The last thing that I'd highlight here is the importance of your leadership. Top-down and bottom-up brand building, for sure. When I think about our programs that have really run with 4-H Grows, those where the extension director and the state 4-H program leader have made building a strong 4-H brand a priority and have messaged that to their local staff and communicated that, have absolutely been those that have been able to, I'd say, get that brand adoption going a little more quickly. So those are a couple of the clear things that as we work with states and as we've been working to set goals in this first 3 months of the new program year, these are the places where we really try to train our lasers and support with you, because we see that it makes the biggest difference. With that, I am so excited to have Chuck Hibbard with us here this afternoon. And Chuck, really appreciate your time on this Friday. We know how important it is for our peers to hear from one another. And so I'm going to turn it over to you and introduce you through this next slide to just share with us some of the ways that Nebraska 4-H has really used these essential elements to make the most of their investment in 4-H Grows.
Well, thank you, Jen, very much, and really appreciate your comments and perspective. Very, very excited about this project. We bought in very, very early when this request came out to participate. And even as early as September 2015, we had those banners that Jen showed on one of the prior slides up at our state fair. We made big, huge banners. And and the reason is the message around resiliency and curiosity. It just really fits what we're trying to accomplish in our 4-H building at the Nebraska State Fair. So we've seen a couple of really, really exciting accomplishments relative to this program. One of the things that we did right up front was to identify a person who was really charged with taking the lead on this. Her name is Tracy Prachel. I'll share her name and contact information in the chat here in just a few minutes. You'd be welcome to contact Tracy if you would like. And so Tracy has really been our ramrod for this. The first thing that was really, really interesting is we took this to our Nebraska 4-H Foundation, and it was like all of a sudden it breathed new life into that organization. They've been doing good work for us in partnership with us, but to have a really focused brand campaign with very strong messaging and really strong marketing resources, they've completely revamped the way they do their business, and they have new fundraising committees that have been established and really focusing on how they better support our program efforts. So that's been one thing that we're really excited about. The second one was we participated in the 2018 Raise Your Hand promotion, and we were actually in the lead the week before it closed, and then our good friends at Ohio State University overtook us. But we did end up in second place. What's really important about that, though, was that over 14,000 hands were raised in support of Nebraska 4-H. And what's really cool about those 14,000 is that 4,500 of those, 32%, were new connections to Nebraska 4-H. So these are people we were not connected with. And Jen, to your point earlier, people who may potentially be 4-H volunteers or people who are willing to support 4-H in other ways. This social media effort through the Raise Your Hand promotion was just a really exciting shot in the arm for us. And in fact, very, very active. Just in the last week, we got 6,000 new likes just in the very last week. So that was exciting. A big part of this has been the individualized marketing and training opportunities provided by Council. We've worked hard with your field marketing manager that's assigned to Nebraska, and have really have attended the annual 4-H Brand Summit the last 3 years. So really have grown our capacity. And what's really cool about that is that so many of our extension professionals across Nebraska are excited about this because, number one, they believe in 4-H. That's the easy part. But being part of a national campaign is just something they've never done before, had never thought about doing before, and it just created a lot of enthusiasm and excitement as a result of that. And so, from our perspective, and we haven't assessed all of the impact on Nebraska, but the marketing materials that we have received as part of this effort, we estimate the value of that to be well over $25,000. The rest of the impact remains to be seen, but we're just very, very excited about it. And I can tell you that for us, buying in early and making this commitment has really been good and valued and appreciated. So Jen, thank you to you and your team for all of your leadership. And I'll post Tracy's contact information in the chat for anyone who would like to connect with her and pick her brain.
Thanks so much, Chuck. And Tracy has been a phenomenal resource, I know, to our marketing liaisons throughout the country, and has always been so willing to share her resources and her time and expertise. And we have found that those types of champions are particularly important as we think about some of our states that have come to the table who may not have a Tracy, but need to have those types of resources all the same. I think I've been so impressed with whether it's Tracy in Nebraska, or our colleagues in Michigan or in California, where they have someone in this dedicated marketing role. They have always been so happy to step up and bring their time and talents to bear for the good of all of our 4-H Pros partners. One of the other things, Chuck, that I know you shared with me is that you're also beginning to track how this campaign is generating a return on investment in terms of the dollars saved. Is you think about that unified message and the time that it takes at the county level to develop these materials when you're starting from scratch. Could I ask you just to share a little bit there?
Yeah, so you know what that is really about is having quality marketing materials that we can use at the county level, and these really are, you know, they're so professional, they're so targeted in terms of message. We've just really appreciated that perspective. So now it's so easy to create customized county-based marketing messages, and it's still part of the national campaign, so that all fits together. But we estimate the value of that to be about $26,000 in savings that we would have spent to develop those marketing materials.
That's really exciting, Chuck. And as we look at this year 3 and beyond, I think one, growing that depth of localization and being able to quantify those numbers in partnership with our states, just as you've done, is mission critical. The other thing that we've seen, and this is why having a liaison or a team that can really be proactive has been such a value add, not just for us as your partner, but as I think about the work we can accomplish together at the state level, but also regionally and nationally, is you come to us with great ideas and you come to us with needs. And we certainly have seen that and appreciated that in our North Central region. We've seen it in the Western region as well. As I look at a big win that we had in that region over the past year, I can remember Andrea Omer, our Western region field marketing liaison, coming back from her time with state 4-H program leaders who said, you know, we really need help getting this information local. Are you available to do trainings? Can you be a resource? And, you know, as you've shared, we've done that in Nebraska. We've done that really hard and heavy in the Western region this year as well. I think it's over 400 4-H professionals that have been trained through either virtual or in-person brand trainings that we've provided nationally. We're always happy to do that. Please don't be shy if you're an investor institution, if you have an in-service or a training where you need help delivering that message. We're always happy to come to the table that way. And I just wanted to highlight that as another way that we've worked in partnership with our states to deepen that local adoption and to generate some additional ROI there as well. Questions or comments for Chuck before we move on? Well, I know we have just a few minutes left in our time today, and what I'd like to do at this point is open the door up for some additional conversation. There are a couple of questions that are on our mind at National 4-H Council that we are eager to put out to the table to this group. I'd also say we see this as the beginning of a conversation with you, certainly not the end. I appreciate the partnership that we've had with your regional directors. And as we look at these next 4 questions, you can expect that we'll be bringing these into your upcoming regional calls that you do as peers in your region. So please don't see this as the only time we'll be having this conversation, but as a first opportunity with deeper conversation and more time for these questions to come. You heard us share at the top of the hour some of the key priorities around which we've built the 4-H Grows program. And you see them stated here again, you know, alumni acquisition and engagement, growing that relevance and reach, and building the local marketing capacity for our state programs. As you think about marketing in your state, one question that we'd have is, are these priorities the right ones? Are they still on track, and are they priorities for you as you think about marketing in your state? And if it's easier to just write a quick yes, no, somewhat in the Zoom chat, you're welcome to do that, or to take your phone off mute.
These are not rhetorical questions, folks.
Thanks, Ed.
So, and
I see a yes from Dr. Powers in California. Also from Dr. Coleman. Great, it's wonderful to see that just in this kind of early gut check that these are feeling on target for you. And this was reiterated for us in the survey that we did with our investor institutions. We asked them to look at these areas and we said, you know, if you had chips, how would you stack them, you know, in terms of your priority? And it was interesting coming out of that survey. For the most part, these all received pretty much equal weight. We really wanted to make sure as we went into this year 3 that we were training our lasers in the right places. And if we had been focusing on something that simply wasn't a priority for you, we wanted to make sure we were shifting that focus pretty quickly. I also see coming in the importance of making sure that we are using the marketing to increase overall youth engagement. And we would say amen. I would also say that is a place where, as we talk about this needing to be a partnership, we absolutely need to have learning and engagement with you to do that well, and to make sure that that's happening in a way that supports the ways you're doing that outreach in your state. We're really excited that on the volunteer engagement front, we're working really closely with the National 4-H Volunteerism Committee as we think about marketing efforts to expand our reach and grow our volunteer base. We wanted to make sure any work we did in that space was in alignment with that group's priorities and good thinking. And so, particularly for our program leaders, you'll be hearing more about that at your national leadership meeting in February. But wanted to tee that up and let you know there's more to come. I also see, and again, this came up through some of the areas where we know we need to grow, that these are the right questions, but can we begin to verify the impact? I think on the marketing side of things, sometimes that's a little bit easier to do, and you've seen some of the ways this afternoon that we're beginning to do that. One of the places where I will want to come back and have some additional discussion with directors and administrators and program leaders is how we can help you better tell that story. As our 4-H Grows investor institutions know, at the end of each program year, so to speak, you receive, in addition to an end-of-year webinar, a report from us that looks at that ROI specifically for your state and some of those big wins that we've had together. And while that hasn't yet gone into a next step of where are we making strides on the overall youth engagement, we've hoped that these have provided some early markers for you around specific ROI to your state. So if that information isn't the right information, if it needs to be told a different way, or if we're missing a piece of that impact, would really welcome hearing from you. At the end of the day, we need to provide tools and resources that make your job telling the story easier. And this is a really important one. So if there are other ways that we should be talking about that impact together, we'd really love to know that. And I think that question and the comments that I'm seeing here from both Dr. Dobbins and Dr. Ross translate really well into our next question around return on investment. What we've seen in our program so far is with 34 institutions, sometimes it feels like we're serving 34 distinct customers, even though the basis of our program is really a shared cooperative. So I think one question that I'd have is, as you think about that ROI, you saw some of the ways that we're beginning to measure that. Are there other things that you're looking at, or a different type of definition? Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate your time. I know we have folks that are signing off, and I certainly want to be respectful that we are right at that 4 o'clock hour. So I hope that you will consider these discussion questions as conversation starters. We'll make sure that folks get a copy of this deck. For those of you that are investor institutions, you can expect that as we move into our continued monthly conversations with your programs, we invite you to join any of those calls. We also like to do quarterly touch bases, again, to really make sure we're measuring progress against your most important goals. These questions will be carrying into that time, as well as into your regional calls that you have as directors. So I appreciate the time this afternoon and the chance to get an early read from many of you on these important areas, and look forward to be able to dive deeper. And I know I speak for Jennifer Sarangelo and Artis Stevens as well on that. We're eager to continue to hear from you. On this slide, you see my contact information. I hope you will not be shy in using it. I'd welcome any additional questions that you have on our time today, or as you think about those discussion questions, if there's places you'd like to be able to go a little deeper, would be glad to set up some one-on-one time to do that individually.
Jen, I want to thank you so much and your colleagues for preparing this and being a part of our Learning for Leaders. Colleagues, this is just the beginning of that conversation. It needs to continue, and feel free to contact Jen, contact your ECOP 4-H Leadership Committee representative if you have other questions. But as we've all discussed, 4-H is very important for the future of the youth of America and for Extension. And so we want to continue to have the conversation about how we can expand that reach and continue to grow 4-H to meet the needs of the youth today. I want to thank everyone for being a part of our first Learning for Leaders for 2019, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. Happy New Year.